Today is a great day. Welcome everybody back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And today I'm just so happy that I came across this awesome video from the Weasle. And we're going to dive into that really quickly. It's also funny because I just made a video asking his basic question about Dricus Du Plessis in terms of what people say about his fighting style, his technique, and his abilities. Just because he doesn't look like anybody else. And people, I think primarily from South Africa, got really mad at me. And a lot of folks even said that they think Dricus will beat Khamzat. And look, maybe he will. This is the game of mixed martial arts. Anything can happen. That's why we love this sport. But I have said that I think Khamzat will not only beat Dricus, but I think he's going to run through light heavyweight and maybe even heavyweight one day. I think that he has the strongest chance out of anybody to become triple champ. I mean, you could argue Alex Pereira is right there. He's just got to move up one more time, and maybe he could clinch that. But I think Khamzat is going to be the first to do it for real. And the reason why I'm so happy today is because somebody has come out and said exactly what I've been saying for over a year, for actually longer than that, for a very long time, really since Khamzat first got on the scene and was going crazy against everybody. I thought back in the day in 2020 that he was going to beat Leon Edwards, and I thought he had a chance to beat Kamaru Usman back then. He later went on to beat him anyways after suffering a hand injury and going into that fight sick. But I digress. Now, let's come back to the Weasle here. Who is the Weasle? It's one of the biggest YouTube channels on the topic of MMA. And just to show you some of his stats, 372,000 subs. He's been doing this for 14 years. I don't know exactly when his content started getting consistent, but he's at least been on YouTube for 14 years. He is an authority in the sport, and I think people really go to him maybe more for just clear-cut expertise, really, really solid expertise. And, man, I don't know. I just think the Weasle is looked at as an authority, and so I'm really taking this as a W that he agrees with me so vehemently, more vehemently than anybody else. What does he agree with me about specifically? He agrees with me about my favorite fighter on the roster, Khamzat Chimaev. So check this out. What did he have to say about Khamzat in particular, not just against Dricus, but beyond? Let's find out.
I think Khamzat is their guy. That's the one fighter for the UFC that they have to focus on. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to try to dispel Dricus's plot armor or something, but they need that man to win. They need Khamzat to win, because if Khamzat wins, he's going to be the biggest star in the sport by far. No one's even close.
I have been saying this for a long time. Not only that he will be champ and all this stuff, but he will be the biggest star of the UFC, even bigger than Conor. And people think I'm crazy for this, but the reason why they think I'm crazy is because they look at Khamzat and they look at Conor and they're saying, okay, the next Conor will be another version of Conor, another big talker, loudmouth guy, crazy guy, wild guy, crazy smack talker, etc. My argument is that Khamzat, people don't fully recognize how big of a star he will be and that he will eclipse Conor, because we've never had a superstar exactly like Khamzat. He will be the first of his kind. Just a insanely talented fighter, somebody who is not afraid to speak their mind and is funny without even trying to be funny, just because he's so blunt. And yeah, so he will be the new evolution of superstar in the UFC, and that's what I've been saying. So this is what the Weasle is agreeing with me right now, which I'm stoked. Now, granted, he hasn't made the comparison to Conor, but like I said, we'll see if I'm right or wrong. I think he will eclipse Conor once he finally gets the belt and then begins to go on his tear and his reign. Anyways, let's keep listening.
Other potential would be Ilia Topuria, but Ilia vacating his belt, it's a big gamble because he has to now beat Islam to be that star, and that's not an easy thing to do. He must beat Islam now. He could have just reigned over featherweight and defended his belt as many times as he wanted. Fight in Spain's arenas and stuff, it would have been insane for him. But he gambled all that, threw his belt away, and now he has to beat Islam. There's no other way. Islam is a star, but I just don't think he has the star power to rival Khabib and Conor and all these other guys, you know? I think he's the biggest global star in the UFC, even including Alex. If you just look at the social media numbers, I mean, he surpasses Alex by far with social media numbers, not even close. We don't know what any of these guys' pay-per-view numbers are like. All we know is that ESPN is just not happy with the numbers. So all we can really go off of is the social media numbers, and Islam is the biggest, with Khamzat right behind him. And Khamzat's never been a champion, right? Islam, Jones, Alex, Ilia, these guys have all had the push of being champion. Khamzat hasn't. That's the craziest thing about that. If Khamzat wins that belt, that is the cash cow of the UFC. That is the guy they need to push the pay-per-view numbers up. Honestly, him as a superstar is great for the sport because he's very exciting too. He tries to finish the fights in the first round, always been part of a war. His most boring fight was with Kamaru Usman, and that fight wasn't even boring. That fight was good too. Khamzat Chimaev being the next superstar, I think is great for everybody, but he needs to fight more. That's the only thing. If he could get 3 fights in a year as champion, that would be perfect for everybody.
So let's break this down a little bit, right? Again, he's got all these, and I'm going to talk about why I don't think the rate at which he fights, the frequency at which he fights is going to be an issue. I've actually addressed that in another video already. I think people are like, oh, he beat Robert Whittaker, but now we won't see him for so long. I think that's sticking to an old narrative from the past that is no longer relevant. And he's talked about this in a video, but I'll come back to that point. Again, Khamzat never been champion, but his numbers are just right behind Islam, who's one of the most popular champs right now in the UFC. Khamzat is people just gravitate towards him because, again, it's that same formula that I've talked about many times. Actually, Dricus has that part too, where he's just authentic. He's himself. He's not afraid to be himself. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind. He's natural in interviews. But Khamzat's that same way. The thing that's interesting about Khamzat is the dominant way in which he has finished fighters. Not every fight, okay? He's not Superman. He's not going to just blast through people and there's going to be no opposition. He's not invincible. And people make the dumbest arguments online. They're like, oh, well, he almost lost to Gilbert Burns. It's like, yeah, sometimes Dricus Du Plessis almost lost to Sean Strickland. They had a razor close decision. Like, what are we talking about? Do you expect somebody to be invincible? And then if they show one little chink in the armor, you say they suck? Like, guys, just stop being so stupid. I mean, just look at it. You have to look at things objectively, not from the perspective of you're just trying to rip Khamzat Chimaev down because you don't like him or you want to prop up, Dricus or some other star. Like, you have to be objective and logical in your thought process. I just don't get it. But anyways, the thing about Khamzat is, yes, his numbers are so high. Yes, he's beloved. But on top of that, he doesn't, the difference between him and Conor, for example, is Conor kind of had like a kryptonite. Conor had a weakness. He had, even though his grappling and takedown defense is quite good, but people knew that he was going to face challenges eventually. And then he did against Khabib. Then he probably would have a major issue fighting Islam or some of these other guys with grapple heavy styles. He had a kryptonite. He had a possible, we knew that was a possible end to his reign. Khamzat doesn't have that. Khamzat, in fact, is on the other side of that, where he is arguably the greatest wrestler the UFC has ever seen. And on top of that, he's got really good striking. I think very underrated striking. His Muay Thai is incredible. We've seen one. He had a knockout. I bet he's going to have more eventually as he continues to work on the striking. But anyways, Khamzat, there's just the ceiling. The ceiling is it's just absolutely out of control. There was another point I was going to just bring up, and I totally forgot. We were talking about, hold on, what was he just saying here?
Good too. Khamzat Chimaev being the next superstar, I think is great for everybody.
Oh yeah. That's what it was. Going back to the frequency at which he fights. He's like, yeah, he's got to fight more frequently. So this was addressed before his last fight against Robert Whittaker, and the UFC has taken it down. It's one of those like pre-UFC event build-up videos where they featured Robert Whittaker and Khamzat, one of the coolest ones they ever made. And they showed Khamzat training in the mountains of Russia. I mean, crazy. Went up to the mountains of Russia at the Olympic training facility. He was having problems in terms of the humidity and the heat in the UAE, and that was causing him to get sick. He said he felt like it was from sitting under air conditioning units all the time trying to stay cool. So they relocated him. And we saw what the result was. He came in, he steamrolled Robert Whittaker like nobody has ever done before. And that's the difference between Khamzat and these other guys, is like, that's a high probability that he's going to steamroll people, which is crazy because I don't think we've ever seen it to that extent. Maybe you could argue Francis Ngannou is one of those guys that just steamrolls people in that manner. But anyways, he's fixed that. He's had thyroid surgery. Now half of his thyroid has been removed. He's kind of dialed in, I think, a lot of his protocols in terms of cutting weight as well. So I don't think these health issues are issues anymore. So I don't think the fight frequency thing is going to be a problem. And yes, once he finally gets that push to be champion, I can't even imagine what's going to happen. On top of it, the way that he's going to get the belt, I believe, is going to be insane. And I love that Dricus is such a star. By the way, people get it twisted. They think I don't like Dricus. I love Dricus. I actually picked him to beat Sean Strickland. And I think Dricus is incredible. I just think that Khamzat is better. That's it. And I think Khamzat is probably going to beat him. But that is no discredit to everything that Dricus has done. I just think Khamzat is on another level. He's a whole another breed of superstar. And by the way, Dricus wants this challenge. Dricus recognizes this, and he wants that challenge. And what a legend Dricus is for wanting to take that on. So anyways, Khamzat is not going to have issues with his fight frequency and his availability and his health, I don't think. And it's going to be incredible. And those numbers, once he actually hits champ status, it's going to be crazy again, especially because I think he's going to steamroll Dricus, and there's going to be just a huge, it's just going to sweep over the internet. Whatever that knockout highlight reel is, or submission, it's probably going to be a submission highlight. It's going to go crazy. Khamzat's going to blow up. Okay, let's keep listening to what the Weasel has to say.
But he needs to fight more. That's the only thing. If he could get 3 fights in a year as champion, that would be perfect for everybody. Get ready, because that Khamzat Chimaev train is going to be steamrolling ahead with no stops to it. Because if Dricus can't beat him, no one's beating him. If Dricus can't beat Khamzat, there's not a single middleweight soul that's beating that guy. Honestly.
So that's the if, right? If Khamzat can beat Dricus, nobody's going to stop him. I 100% believe that. But now listen to what he says about the matchup between Khamzat and Dricus.
Yeah, I think he beats Dricus. I think Khamzat is the best middleweight in the world. After what he did Robert Whittaker, there's just no debate for me. Like, I think there's not a single middleweight he doesn't beat. If we look at all the skills in the middleweight division of every fighter, like think of the best skills at middleweight, combining all the fighters, right? So you're thinking of like Adesanya's striking and Dricus's use of his attributes and Khamzat's wrestling and stuff like that. You know, just think of every top tier skill of the middleweight division. I think Khamzat's wrestling is the most impressive by far. He is one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen in MMA. And for a middleweight to be that good is crazy. He is so incredibly technical. He is so ferocious with his takedowns. He has the most unstoppable takedown I've ever seen. His low single leg and low double legs, even Kamaru Usman was not able to. And here's the thing about the Kamaru Usman fight. I think Usman, even on short notice, is better than a lot of the middleweights. I think after all these years, Khamzat will reach that potential of his as being one of the biggest forces in the UFC. I'm going to be honest, man. I think he beats Dricus easy. I think Khamzat's so much better than everybody else at middleweight. It's not even close. That with how easy he beats Dricus, people will start questioning if middleweight was really overrated this whole time or Khamzat's underrated. But enough talk of the MMA business side of it.
Okay. So these are all things that I've been saying for over a year, years. And I was just so happy to come across this, because to me, this just, yes, there's an element of bias in that I want Khamzat to win because I think he will be amazing. I'm a fan of him all the way around. I think he's a good person, a good human being. I think he has good values. I like his fighting style. I think it's exciting. I just like everything about him. So yeah, you could say there's a bias, but again, the bias has developed because I think he's that good, right? It's not like I have a personal relationship with him or I know him or something like that. I'm trying to prop him up. This all began because I've just been so blown away and impressed by the domination that he's shown time and again. But anyways, I love this so much that the Weasel, who's one of the most trusted people in MMA YouTube, is saying this, is wholeheartedly believing this. And of course, because it is exactly aligns with what I've been saying. So we'll see what happens. They're going to fight soon. Hopefully that will get announced very shortly. And this will be the biggest fight of the year. And well, I think it's going to propel the UFC to a whole new level. And what better time when they're about to sign a new exclusivity deal. I think you talked about this earlier, that, you know, MMA, UFC might be going to Netflix, may stay on ESPN. I don't know, but it's the perfect time. It's the perfect time, especially as Conor McGregor seems to be on his way out of the sport. Now we have the rise of Khamzat Chimaev. So there you go. Let me know. You guys, people, all the Dricus fans are going to be upset, I'm sure, in the comments. So go ahead, let me have it. And I guess we'll just see what happens when they eventually do fight. And once again, hey, it could go any which way, right? But if I'm betting on this fight, I'm betting on Khamzat 100%. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you like or dislike my take? And make sure to subscribe if you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA channel. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.